Hello, folks. Good morning. Welcome back to our series where we cover interesting trends that are playing out across Indian firms and sectors, right? The subsector that we'll be looking at today is MDF, which we've been tracking for the better part of 3 years now. And one of the reasons it is on our radar is it is a proxy to growing urban housing and demand from urban centers, right? Uh, Two major catalysts playing there. One, as urban housing grows, the demand for furniture, etc., grows, and even within the furniture mix, the mix of non-plywood in India is still quite low, right? So, for context, globally, it's broadly 20-80, 20% being plywood, 80% being non-plywood. In India, that number is closer to 50-50 odd or so, right? So, as younger customers become more comfortable with using MDF furniture, and the price differential between MDF and plywood still remains closer to 40-45% odd, the growth of the MDF space would be quite strong in a market like India, right? So that was the primary demand story for MDF as such. However, what had happened since FY23 is we had a cycle of very sharp ramp up in capacity, and when stuff like that happens, you typically have 2-3 years of relative weakness in both volume growth as well as pricing, right? So we'd seen a similar cycle back in 2018 as well, where post a good surge in demand, all of the folks kind of ramped up capacity quite sharply, and subsequently we had a year or two of slight weakness there, right? So you need to track the capacity expansion cycle in a sector like this quite closely, and that capacity had ramped up almost 50% over the last 2 years or so, right? So not very ideal from a supply standpoint, right? That being said, when we're looking at the import trends in the country, the import of MDF in the country over the last few months, we saw a very sharp ramp down there, right? So for context, back in Jan-Feb, we used to import around 24,000 odd tons of MDF every year, every month. That number dropped to around 3,400 tons in March, and in June that's fallen even further to around 1,600 tons or so, right? So the primary driver for that is we had put in place quality certifications, extra certifications that would be needed for any of the players who are exporting their materials, so basically getting imports into India. And post that, the MDF imports have come down quite sharply, right? Why this is important is because 45% of India's MDF consumption is effectively in the southern Indian states, and because a lot of the imports come from the seashore lines on the ports on the southern borders, the South India market is primarily impacted by imports, right? So as imports come down, the MDF players who have good MDF capacity in the South Indian markets stand to kind of benefit materially, right? So could end up being a good tactical play because broadly all of the top MDF players have taken, say, around a 20% hit on prices over the last year or so, and the underlying assumption there is post the capacity ramp ups, you will have kind of pricing pressure, etc., in all of these players. But as one of those headwinds, at least the import part of it comes down a bit. Players in India who have a good South India based manufacturing presence can benefit from it, because as you can understand, MDF is a relatively high volume, low value sort of a product, right? So you cannot kind of move it up or down too much. So reduction in imports directly benefits the South Indian MDF markets as such, right? So that looked like one interesting sector and opportunity that could be explored further, and we'll be kind of looking at that in detail as well. And if any opportunities come up, we'll be sharing that with our clients, right? So that's it from my side for today. See you guys tomorrow, and thanks a lot for following our content.